You're mid-sentence, saying something perfectly reasonable, and someone cuts you off, not to add something, not because they disagree, just to let you know that what you're saying doesn't matter. Your chest tightens, your face gets warm, you either go quiet or you fire back too hard and look like the emotional one. Either way, you lose, and they walk away feeling exactly the way they wanted to feel, above you. That moment isn't random. There's an entire psychology behind it, and most people are playing it completely wrong. Most people assume commanding respect from arrogant people is one move, one comeback, one power pose, one moment where you finally put them in their place. This assumption is so common and so wrong that it almost deserves its own diagnosis, because arrogance doesn't respond to single moves, it responds to patterns. 10 specific responses, actually, like a combination lock. You can know 9 of them. You can execute 9 of them perfectly. Miss one, and you're back where you started, reacting on their terms, not yours. I'm giving you all 10, but not as a list you'll forget by Thursday, as a way of seeing the room differently. Arrogance is not confidence. Confidence doesn't need your reaction. Arrogance does. In 2003, neuroscientist Hidehiko Takahashi at the National Institute of Radiological Sciences in Japan put people in fMRI machines and showed them something unsettling. When participants believed they were higher status than someone else, their brains activated the striatum, the same reward center that lights up during cocaine use, gambling wins, and orgasm. Feeling superior is literally addictive. The person talking down to you isn't just being rude, they're getting a neurochemical hit. Your silence, your flinch, your awkward laugh. That's the dose. You are the drug. Think about the last time someone was condescending to you. What did you do? Whatever it was, it either fed the machine or it didn't. There is no neutral, and here's what almost nobody sees. Arrogant people aren't powerful, they're dependent. The way a quiet person at a party might be processing the room at abnormally high resolution while everyone else is just shouting over the music. The arrogant person is doing something similar but inverted. They're scanning for reactions, tracking who flinched, who laughed it off, who got loud, who looked away. They're not listening to what you're saying, they're listening for the hit. Meetings are a particular case study here. Someone says something that could have been an email, but delivers it with that tone. The one that says, "I know more than you, and everyone in this room should know it." Within 40 seconds, you've got 2 instincts firing, and both of them lose. The first instinct is shrinking. You laugh it off, change the subject, look at your phone, make yourself smaller so the moment passes faster. It feels like peace. It isn't. Psychologist Mark Leary at Duke University spent decades studying what he called sociometer theory, the idea that your self-esteem works like a gauge constantly monitoring how others treat you. When someone dismisses you and you shrink, your sociometer drops, and your body reads it as a social threat. You weren't being mature, you were being trained, you just told their brain the slot machine paid out. Shrinking is not peace, it's payment. The second instinct is escalating. They condescend and you match the energy. You get loud, you get sharp, you try to win, and for about 30 seconds, it feels like power. It isn't. Psychologist Bushman at Ohio State University ran studies on what he called the aggression loop, the finding that when you respond to dominance with dominance, neither person de-escalates. Both brains stay in threat mode. You look emotional, they look provoked. The room doesn't see a winner. They see 2 people who lost control. Escalation isn't strength, it's a receipt. Okay, something worth slowing down for. What happens when you do neither? When someone says something condescending, do not respond immediately. Let 1 full second pass. Then 2, look at them. Not aggressively, calmly, like you're genuinely considering whether what they just said is worth engaging with. This silence is excruciating for the arrogant person, because their brain just placed a bet that you would shrink or escalate and give them that dopamine hit. When you don't, it creates what psychologists call an expectancy violation. Their brain doesn't know what to do next. You've unplugged the machine. Those words, when they finally come, if they come at all, tend to land differently than words from someone who talks constantly. Not because you're performing power, because you've lived in the silence for a beat before you decided whether to speak. And the precision of that is a rarer quality than we've collectively decided to value. This one sounds counterintuitive. When someone talks down to you, ask them to explain themselves, not sarcastically, genuinely. That's an interesting take. Can you walk me through how you got there? Arrogance is almost always surface level. It's a tone, not an argument. When you ask someone to go deeper, the tone collapses. They either admit they were bluffing, or they stumble through a half-baked explanation that everyone in the room can see through. You didn't attack them. You handed them a shovel and let them dig. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. You redirect your attention. You turn to someone else in the group and pick up a different thread. Or you say, anyway, and move on as if what they said was a minor aside, not the centerpiece of the conversation. Arrogance needs resistance to exist. It needs you to push back so it can push harder. When you simply move on, you remove the oxygen. The fire goes out on its own. 6 responses in. If you're thinking, I already do some of these, good. But the lock doesn't do partial credit. The next 4 are where most people think they're fine, and where the interaction still falls apart. Commanding respect from arrogant people has almost nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with the room. Robert Cialdini, the psychologist who wrote Influence, identified a principle called social proof. People don't decide who has status by watching the two people in a conflict. They decide by watching how the group reacts. If you stay calm and the arrogant person gets flustered, the room shifts. Not because you won, because you demonstrated self-regulation under pressure. Anthropologists have documented this across every culture they've studied, from the Maasai in Kenya to boardrooms in Tokyo to street corners in Brooklyn. The person who stays composed while someone else loses composure always gains status in the eyes of the group. It's not a trick, it's a law. In the 1960s, Dutch primatologist Frans de Waal began decades of research on chimpanzee hierarchies at the Arnhem Zoo in the Netherlands. Everyone assumed the most dominant chimps were the biggest and most aggressive. They weren't. The chimps who held the highest rank the longest were the most socially controlled. When a lower-ranking chimp challenged them, they didn't immediately attack. They paused. They looked. Sometimes they just turned away. That non-reaction drove the challenger insane, because the challenge only works if the dominant animal treats it as a threat. Humans run the same software. We just put suits on it. The reason most people can't do any of this isn't because they don't know the techniques. It's because arrogance triggers your amygdala, your brain's threat detection center, in about 12 milliseconds. Before your rational brain knows what happened, your body is already in combat mode. Heart rate up, cortisol flooding your bloodstream, prefrontal cortex going partially offline. Navy SEALs call the half second between stimulus and reaction the space. They train it with breathing, visualization, and repeated exposure. You don't need to go through BUD/S, but you need to practice the pause before you need it, because in the moment, your body will do what it's trained to do. If it's trained to flinch, it'll flinch. If it's trained to pause, it'll pause. And here's what matters most here. There are 2 different ways of moving through social reality, and we've decided without much discussion that one of them is the default, the loud one. The one that fills silence before it gets weird. The one that announces status instead of demonstrating it. The arrogant one got to set the standard. Everyone else has been gently failing it ever since. But the loudest person in the room is not the most powerful. They're the most desperate. They need your reaction more than you need their approval. That tightness in your chest isn't weakness. It's 2 million years of evolution firing in a modern room. But you're not a chimp. You don't have to follow the script your amygdala wrote. The next time someone cuts you off mid-sentence, don't rush to shrink. Don't rush to escalate. Stay in the pause for a moment. See what it feels like when you stop plugging in the machine. They'll notice. They always do. That person who talked down to you, they just told you something important about themselves. Not about you. About how badly they need to feel significant. You don't have to be their supply. You just have to stop plugging in the machine.